Yashodanandana Vrajanarandana Yashodanandana Vrajanarandana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Devi Jaya Radha Jaya Gopichana Bala Giravardhani Jaya Gopichana Bala Giravardhani Yashodanandana Vrajanarandana Yashodanandana Vrajanarandana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Jari Hari Jaya Radha Madhava Jari Hari Jaya Gopichana Bala Giravardhani Jaya Gopichana Bala Giravardhani Yashodanandana Vrajanarandana Yashodanandana Vrajanarandana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. 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 Narayana Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottama Devam Sarasvatim Vyasyam Jatutaya Madhurya Nastaprayashu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloki Bhakti Bhavati Naishtaki. So, good morning, everyone. I was all excited to come in here to be part of darshan and take part in class, and here I was on the schedule. So we're gonna read this morning from Srimad Bhagavatam, the third canto, 7th chapter, and text number 40. And this chapter is titled "The Further Inquiries by Vidura." And I really love the conversations between Vidura and Maitreya. We've been having some nice conversations here during class. So I'll read the text, and then we can all take turns. Etan me pritcha prasannam hare karma visitjaya rusi me gyansi pamitravad ajyanyanasta chakshusha. Etan me prachita prasnan hare karma visitjaya ruhi me janasa mitravad ajyanasta chakshusha. Etan me prachata prasnan hare karma visithyaya ruhi me gyansa mitradva adya nasta chakshusaha. Anyone else like to? In the temple, we'll just do we'll maybe call and response. Okay. Etan me prachata prasnan Etame Pritchata Prashnan.
Hare Karma Vivichaya.
Hare Karma Vivichaya.
Ruhi me Yasha Vitrata.
Ruhi me Gyasa Vitravat.
Ajaya Nasta Chakshusha.
Abjaya Nasta Chakshusha. Nas?
Ketan me Prishita
Prashnam.
Hare
Hare Karma Vivichaya. Bruhi me Gyasya Mitravat. Ajaya Nasta Chakshusha. Anyone else? Etam me prachata prashnam.
Hare Karma Vivichaya.
Ruhi me Gyasya Vitradvam.
Ajaya Nasta Chakshusha.
Anyone online?
Hare Krishna.
Yeah.
Etan me prachataha prashannan.
Etam prachata prashnan.
Hare karma vibhitshaya.
Hare Karma Vivichaya.
Nishaya.
Bruhi me ajanasya mitrabhat.
Ruhi me Yasha Mitravat.
Ajaya nasta chakshushaha.
Ajaya Nasta Chakshusha.
Hare Krishna.
एतान् मे पृच्छता प्रश्नान्
Etam
Ame Prashata Prashnan.
हरे कर्मा विवित्सया
Hare Karma Vivichaya.
ब्रूहि मे अज्ञानस्य मित्रवात्
Ruhi me Yasha Mitravat.
अजया नष्टचक्षुषा
Ajaya Nasta Chakshusha.
Word for word. Etan.
Etan.
All of these.
All of these
May.
may,
My. Prichata.
Prichata,
Of one who inquires.
of one who inquires.
Prashyanan.
Prashana,
Questions.
questions.
Hare.
Hare,
Of the Supreme Lord.
of the Supreme Lord.
Karma.
Karma,
Pastimes.
pastimes.
Vivitsaya.
Vivitsaya,
Desiring to know.
desiring to know.
Ruhi.
Ruhi,
Kindly describe.
kindly describe.
May.
May,
Unto me. Agnyasya.
Agyas,
Of one who is ignorant.
of one who is ignorant.
Mitravat.
Mitrava,
Because of friendship.
because of friendship.
Ajaya.
Ajaya,
By the eternal energy.
by the external.
External energy, thank you. Nasta chakshusha.
That's Chakshusha,
Those who have lost their vision.
those who have lost their vision.
Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. My dear sage, I have put all these questions before you with a view to knowing the pastimes of Hari, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. You are the friend of all, so kindly describe them all for those who have lost their vision. Purport. Vidura put forward many varieties of questions with a view to understanding the principles of transcendental loving service to the Lord. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 2:41, devotional service to the Lord is one, and the mind of the devotee is not diverted to the many branches of uncertainties. Vidura's purpose was to be situated in that service to the Lord, wherein one merges undivertedly. He claimed the friendship of Maitreya Muni, not because he was Maitreya's son, but because Maitreya was actually the friend of all who have lost their spiritual vision due to material influence. So I'm going to read the translation again. My dear sage, I've put all these questions before you with a view to knowing the pastimes of Hari, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. You are the friend of all. Kindly describe them for all those who have lost their vision. So in this chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, we're hearing about the conversations between Vidura and Maitreya. And one of the things I love about this section of the Bhagavatam is because we have these layered conversations in the Srimad Bhagavatam. And one of the things, the sages of Naimisharanya, they're here, they're gathering, they're hearing from Sukha Goswami about the conversation between Parikshit Maharaj and Sukadev Goswami. And then we're hearing about this folded in conversation again from Maitreya and Vidura. So we have all of these different layers of conversation, but they're all about the same thing. They're all inquiring. What is that inquiry, that deep inquiry of who are we? What is our relationship with the Lord? What are the material energies? How did we get here? Tell me more about the Lord. Tell me more about his qualities, his pastimes. Tell me more, tell me more, tell me more. There's I'm going to take it back and digress a minute, but there's a song from the movie Grease. If any Westerners have seen the movie Grease, like, tell me more, tell me more. That's a great song, but they're wanting to know about this wonderful relationship, right? Some are loving, tell me more. But what are we inquiring? This is that's just a mundane example, but what are we really wanting to hear more about? We want to hear more, more, more. Please tell me more, tell me more. All of these examples of conversations are really just that drive to know who we are in relationship to the Supreme. Because here we are in these material energies, and here it says, Maitreya was actually a friend of all who have lost their spiritual vision due to material influences. So we're here, we're in these material energies, we're completely and utterly subject to the modes of material nature because of our material conditioning, because of our covering. But for those of us who have come to some even inkling that there's something beyond all of this, that there's something beyond what we're experiencing here in material energies, we want to know more. So we inquire submissively. And we see this a lot in Bhagavad Gita. We see this as a theme throughout the Bhagavatam, is that submissive inquiry. And what is submissive inquiry really? What does that mean? Because sometimes we might mistake the word submissive to be kind of a doormat. Oh, I'm just doing whatever someone tells me. I'm being completely like a slave, submissive. But no, when we're submissively hearing, when we're inquiring submissively, what we're really doing is we're letting our walls drop down. We're letting our walls drop down so that we can actually absorb and truly hear what someone's sharing with us. So that's the submission is an act of love. It's an act of surrender, in a sense. We're surrendering to the understanding of hearing submissively. So we hear, who are the people that we hear submissively from? We might hear submissively from our parents, from a teacher. And we know that Prabhupada always instructed his disciples when he was teaching them a person to hear submissively from him. And that's not because he was wanting to control them, lord over them. There was nothing malicious and controlling in that request from his students. What he was asking of his students was truly to open their hearts, to what he was about to share. And what he was sharing was most confidential. He was sharing this understanding of who the Lord is, who is Krishna. Again, what is our relation? These are the questions that come up over and over and over again. We see Arjuna on the battlefield, and he's desperately trying to understand. He's lamenting. He's in utter despair. And he's trying to understand what is going on. I'm standing here in this battlefield. I'm sitting here next to my friend, my dearest friend, my cousin Krishna. He was driving the chariot. So in that moment, Krishna is almost in a more submissive position to Arjuna, but he's sitting, he's above Krishna in that situation. And he's lamenting. He doesn't know what to do. So we have these examples of suddenly, when Arjuna realizes who Krishna is, he's suddenly hearing submissively from him because that relationship is now changed. that now Arjuna can see Krishna as the supreme and not just his cousin that they hung out and, romped around and they were laying on the bed just chatting it up. This is now the relationship of someone that is submissively hearing from the Lord. So now the Lord is giving this instruction to Arjuna to say, this is my relationship with you. This is my relationship with the devotees. This is how we came to be. This is me and all of my opulence in the 11th chapter. So here, Vidura is having a similar conversation with Maitreya to really gain an understanding. Why are these questions coming up over and over and over again? What's the theme here? Why should these questions be asked? Who am I? How did I get here? They are natural questions. Often we find ourselves, maybe as a child, like, Mommy, where did I come from? Don't we often hear children, they ask their mommies, Mommy, how did I get here? And Mommy's like, well, you came from my tummy. Well, how? How did that happen? That's just a natural inclination that children have. And as adults, we might lose a sense of that because we get so pulled into activity. And the material energies, and I was really meditating on this a lot yesterday, the material energies are very much designed to keep us in a pattern, to keep us going in the flow, right? We have to do. We have to, not have to, but it's the construct, we're going to say. It's a construct to say you have to go to school, you have to go to college, you have to get a job and get married and have children, and then you retire, and these are the things you do in retirement, and so and so, and then you die. And so we all know that birth and death is inevitable, right? This is the cycle of birth and death. We know that part is true. But everything in between is really a material construct that we oftentimes get sucked into. And so here, Maitreya is saying that he is the friend of those who have lost their spiritual vision due to these material influences. And this is where it gets really sticky, really fast. And so in this discussion with his son, Vidura, he's trying to help Vidura, but also helping us, because we know that the Bhagavatam was here. It was shared. It was written by Srila Vyasadeva, because this is the guidebook for us as devotees. And I was giving a class on the preface of Srimad Bhagavatam a couple of weeks ago. And one of the things that I always love about Bhagavatam, and I've always been an avid lover of Bhagavatam, because in life we might find role models. Looking up to this person because they're a powerful leader, or because they're a great star, like singer or actor, whatever that is, or maybe they're a great scientist. So we might find, and even in our immediate life, we might have role models, that people that we look up to. But what does the Bhagavatam do? It gives us role models that we can really aspire to in our devotional life. So when we take to the Bhagavatam and we see this as what are the questions that we could be asking to deepen our understanding, to deepen our spiritual life? So that's one. So Vidura is giving this example. He's acting as a role model for us to say, these are the questions we really should be looking at in our lives. These are the questions we should be asking and inquiring of someone, or through Shastra. And then what else is that these role models, they provide us with a way to be. Because we see that he's listening, he's asking submissively. In other role models, we see Ambarish Maharaj. And this is a very commonly cited role model for all of us, is that his mouth was used to speak the names of the Lord, to speak katha. His feet were used to take him step by step to the temple. His eyes were used to the deities, for viewing the deities, right? So he took everything in his life and he spiritualized it. So this gives us another way of being, right? Now, these are, like I said, these are role models, and role models are they're aspirational. So it's not that we suddenly try and become that person. That's not the goal of having role models like given here through Bhagavatam. It's not to suddenly just flip a switch and be like, I'm a different person now. and I'm going to be this, and this, right? Because we know that that can be really treacherous. And this is something we have to be very aware of in our spiritual life, is falsely jumping ahead into a position, into a space, either mentally, in our material lives, that we're not yet at. But if we look at that as an aspirational, not as a assuming the identity of, right? We don't want to do that. That can create some discord in our mind. We're not trying to assume identity of anyone. We are just trying to aspire to some of those qualities, just some of the qualities that we see here in these examples in Bhagavatam. And so what are some of these qualities? And they're given in Bhagavad Gita. We know that the demonic and the angelic, the highest qualities, the devas, the demons, we go through that in Bhagavad Gita. So we know what some of these qualities are, right? So we see these examples in Bhagavatam: the submissiveness, compassion, kindness, cleanliness, strength of mind. These are the things that we are seeking in our own devotional lives, in our own devotional practice. So when we're thinking about getting to these different material influences, and we're navigating these material influences day in and day out, we are hopefully, if we're here, we may have already seen some aspect of how that could be. We're sitting here, we're listening to Srimad Bhagavatam, we're reading Bhagavad Gita, maybe hearing Bhagavad Gita in class. If we've already taken that step, we've already made a decision that what we're experiencing in our everyday material lives is not going to cut it for us. It's not satisfying. It's not the ultimate goal, the material activities. So we've already made a decision by taking part in the hearing, because we know that Shravana is the first of the 9 processes of Bhakti Yoga. We need to hear. And it's, again, not to just keep pounding on this word, but we need to hear submissively. So we need to hear with an open heart and an open mind to know how we can approach the Lord and know how we can approach our own Bhakti Yoga in our own practice. So in that Shravana, we're here, we've made that decision. So what do we do with this information? What is Maitreya telling Vidura? He's telling Vidura all about how to get to this point. How in the verse that we read yesterday, how could one have knowledge of devotional service and detachment without the help of devotees? So he's saying here, through the process of Bhakti Yoga, we need the help of devotees. We need the help of one another. We can't do this alone. So if we try and put ourselves on an island and think, I'm going to just stay at home, I'm going to be a yogi in a cave on a mountain, whatever that looks like in this day and age in 2025, I'm going to just wall myself up. I'm going to just read, study, and then I'm going to get it, right? But that can definitely bring us to, in a very elevated place, but it's really the interaction with other devotees. It's really that association, that conversation, and even bumping into each other, right? Because we know in devotional life that we bump into each other, as do we do in our material lives as well. And I was saying this to someone the other day, the thing about having relationships with devotees, because devotee relationships are the most precious, but they are all the most precarious of all of our relationships. And why is that? Why is it the most precious and the most precarious? It's the most precious relationship because it's rare to have a relationship in that devotional life, because devotees are so rare, but it's so precarious because we have to be careful. We have to be careful in those relationships, no matter what. So we have to be thoughtful and aware when we're engaging in these relationships. And so I love here that in just the verse yesterday that Maitreya was saying that the knowledge of devotional service It cannot happen without the help of devotees. So we can read and read and read, but Prabhupada was not an island. Prabhupada took the association of his spiritual master, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Prabhupada took, read all of the throughout the parampara, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. You can see a lot of times his commentary is woven in, and you can even download. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary for Srimad Bhagavatam, and even you can see how Prabhupada's coming to some of these things as well. Plus, he's bringing in the relation of the current day, so he's relating it for us to current day. But he's still taking on that association from others. So that's how we come today, now that we have all of this wisdom at our fingertips. But it is in the setting of classes that we can come together and really appreciate it. Because when we ask a question, we can sit there in class, and this is why the in-person classes are really nice. And so, Joan, I'm really glad that you're doing this, at least on Saturdays, having in-person class for Bhagavatam. I think it's really important, so that we can just be with one another, share breakfast, prasadam. But even online, it's such an amazing opportunity that we can ask questions and get the discussion going. There's nothing better than getting a great, lively discussion going about devotional life and how we can understand our own relationship. And it's interesting. My Guru Maharaj said a long time ago, he would tell stories about from Gargamuni and the different pastimes of Krishna and all of these different pastimes, and he would tell these stories and relish them. And I just love sitting in his classes, and he would just be sitting there and giggling to himself, and he's just telling these best stories. And he was really it was flowing through him, and you could just feel like these stories were just flowing through him. And then someone, probably me being one of them, but well, how does that relate to me? How can I apply this in my own life? And he said in different classes, he said, we hear the stories of Krishna to deepen our relationship with Krishna. But when we're still asking about how does this relate to me, we're here. I was like, oh, okay, yeah, that's me. That's me. I get it. But we need both, right? Because we're still, still in that if you want to say newer stage, neophyte, Kandista Adhikari, whatever you wanted to say. I know that I personally need a lot of hand-holding. But when we ask those questions, when we start asking the questions about, well, how do I benefit from this? How do I improve my practice? How can I better understand Krishna? How can it help me be a better person, right? It's through the stories that we can glean those answers. But if you notice in Bhagavatam, these questions are being asked by the sages in different ways. They're being asked by Vidura. They're being asked, King Parikshit is hearing, but he's hearing some of these questions too. There's even the back and forth between Bhishma Deva and Yudhisthira Maharaj. Love that conversation. That's a beautiful, beautiful conversation. I think it's in the first canto, end of first canto, early second canto. The conversation between the conversation between King Yudhisthira and Bhishma Deva. Bhishma Deva is lying there, dying, and he's giving all of this guidance to King Yudhisthira, who is now the new king as a result of this war. And Bhishma Deva, although we see him, we think, oh, he's on that side, he was defeated. But no, he was a great, devotee of the Lord. And he was passing on all this wisdom to King Yudhisthira to help him be a better king, to help him really lead his kingdom from the highest perspective, to lead in a devotional way. So these conversations that we're encountering over and over and over again in Bhagavatam are the conversations, they're setting that stage for the conversations that we could be having if we really sought to deepen our own relationship and deepen our own bhakti. So, so what do we do? So we have these conversations, we can start thinking, okay, I'm going to go to the Bhagavatam and I'm going to, get a couple questions in mind and start talking to some other devotees. That's one thing we can do. We can talk to senior devotees. And then the other thing we can do is through these questions, there's a tool that sometimes we may overlook because we talk so much about association, but there's a tool that sometimes we might overlook, which is prayer. And these questions, sometimes they can come within. We have HG Guru in our hearts, right here. And I know that sometimes personally, when I am going through something really difficult, when there's difficulties in life, as much as I try and keep my mind centered and focused during japa, it is often during japa that those questions are answered. Why is that? You know, it's like, oh, I'm trying to focus, but yet during japa is when the answers come to me. You know, sometimes that japa turns into supplication. It turns into a prayer, because that is a direct connection. We're chanting to Krishna. We're saying, dear Lord, how may I be engaged in your service? Dear Lord, we're crying out. And we've seen this, heard this example 1,000 times given in classes, like a child crying out for his mother. Well, if we're during japa, we're crying out for Krishna, then we're crying out for Krishna. So when we are in trouble, like a child might be in trouble when they're crying out for their mother, if we are in trouble during that japa, it's a great opportunity for that prayer to really come through. So these questions can also be answered through prayer. And then the other way is that, have you ever had something going on in your life and you're just really struggling and you're like, I'm going to just open up the Bhagavad Gita and just open up to a page and read it. I love that. That's like one of my favorite things, you know, because, and I just really try and be very random about it. Like, okay, I'm not going to always just go to that same place in the book. I'm going to just really turn to a page I don't usually turn to. And I open it up. I'm like, okay, you know, and then, and read it. And so often, even just reading the Bhagavad Gita, of course, can give any sort of enliven you, it can enthuse you, but it also can be there because the Bhagavad Gita is there because what is the whole theme of Bhagavad Gita? How does it start out? Arjuna's lamenting. That's the whole starting point with Bhagavad Gita. They're in a war and Arjuna throws down his Gandiva bow and he just comes down. He's like, I don't know what to do. Please, I don't know what to do. I give up. I can't fight. I can't fight anymore. And so when he does that, he throws down his bow, he's now in the same state that I know I feel sometimes, which is utter despair, you know, because the material energies can be very heavy. They can be difficult. They can be really challenging. And sometimes they can be great. Right? So we don't want to lose sight of some of the things that can happen in material life. They can uplift us momentarily anyway. They're not permanent. We're not going to get the same upliftment from material energies and material life that we will get from spiritual activities. We know that because we know that material energies are temporary. They are temporary. So they're illusory. They kind of, you know, it's like, you ever hear the phrase, waiting for the other shoe to drop, you know, or, you know, things are good, I'm just waiting. You know, you hear people say like, things are really good right now, I'm just waiting for that other shoe to drop, or I'm just waiting for that, you know, moment. Because people, even if they're not connected to any kind of understanding, like we study here, and we talk about here, even when you talk to people that aren't connected with this, they feel it. They feel it. They feel that, like, gosh, you know, things are really good right now, but then something happens. So when we're navigating the material energies, we have to be mindful that navigating the material energies is also very precarious. The material energies are there to trip us up. You know, they're there to see, you know, see where we still have attachments. They're there to test us, challenge us. They're not there ultimately to uplift all the time, right? So we know that the material energies are going to trip us up. So when we have a deep connection with something that will give us salvation, will you? You know, that's more of a Christian word, but it will give us some connection and some hope, some sort of hope for life moving forward. That's what we're here for. That's why we study this, and that's really the examples that are given to us in Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam. And like I said, in Bhagavad Gita, we really have such a beautiful example with Arjuna because he is hope against hope. I mean, you know, I think it's hard because, you know, I had a bad day at work, but Arjuna is facing like killing his family members on the battlefield. This is pretty serious stuff. And it's not to diminish, we don't want to diminish the pain that we feel in material life because it's real to us. But Arjuna is in this horrendous situation. And because of that situation that he was in and that conversation that he had with Krishna, that's how we have Bhagavad Gita. What a blessing. What a blessing to have that. So we have Bhagavad Gita because of Arjuna's suffering, because of his internal mind getting so distressed over a situation. But at the end, Krishna says to him, you know, it's up to you, basically, you know. But Arjuna finally at the end realizes what he needs to do. He knows that ultimately Krishna is the controller. Krishna's in charge. So whenever we're in our material lives and we're engaging in material activities, if we remember that Krishna is always in charge, that doesn't mean we just stand back and, you know, stand in a corner and be like, okay, Krishna, you're going to do this, and then I'm going to just stand here and it's good. You take care of everything. That's not it, right? That's not the relationship we have with Krishna. Krishna is aloof. This is the Chitta Beta Tapa. Krishna's aloof from our interactions, but he's also there because he's the ultimate decider in everything that happens. So if we look at our lives to say, like, I still have to take action. I have to make decisions. I have free will. That's part of what we wanted when we wanted to come to material energies. We wanted free will. We wanted to make decisions on our own and be separate. That's how we ended up in this mess, you know. But the way to get back home is to realize that we have free will. Hopefully our free will is bringing us closer to the Lord. And in that free will, the Lord is the ultimate, you know, through our karma or through Krishna's mercy. Those are the two kind of things that might be deciding factors. You know, those are two main ones, karma and Krishna's mercy, that will decide outcome in our lives on what happens. But if we understand whatever that outcome is, it's due to that relationship with Krishna, then we're going to be okay. Then even if it's not what we wanted, or if it hurts, or if it's difficult, if it causes some temporary suffering, then at least we know it's Krishna's will. And we still might feel sad, we might feel distressed, but we know that we have that lifeline to Krishna. And as long as we hold on to that lifeline to Krishna, as long as we hold on to that relationship, we'll be okay. Because what is okay is our material life may not always feel okay, but it's our spiritual life that we want to be checking in on. Is my spiritual life okay? That's the eternal life. Because that doesn't go away ever. Because we know the soul is indestructible, cannot be cut, cannot be burned. On Bhagavad Gita, we know all the things and list them about the soul. So we know that the soul will go on. The soul has this unending relationship with the Lord. It's part and parcel. So as long as we continue to maintain our spiritual relationship and we cultivate that and uncover and clean and uncover and clean, then we'll be fine. Because Krishna has us. He has us in his net, in his arms. And we just have to trust the process that we're going through. So I'll stop here and open it up to any questions, reflections, comments, corrections, anything.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hey, Krishna. Yes, let's see.
You're asking whether people want to utilize spiritual life oftentimes I find people that exhibit these qualities that you're talking about. They're submissive, they're also compassionate and kind, but they would not follow the same spiritual path with me. That often makes me confused. Obviously, I want them to know the nectar of Krishna or know the nectar of my cow or my guru, but how do you reconcile that? Because you want them to be on the same path as you, but they do still exhibit those qualities. I don't know if I'm being clear.
No, you're very clear. So I'll repeat the question for those who are online. So the question was, so these qualities, these, Vaishnava qualities of compassion, kindness, submission that we see in people in our lives, but they might not be in the path of Krishna consciousness. And how do we reconcile that when we want them to know about Krishna? That's a really great question, because I think one of the things, I love interfaith discussions, and I was a member of Interfaith Philadelphia for many years. And I think that having interfaith dialogue is really important. So we can embrace, first of all, learn about that person. If someone has those qualities, but they might not be in our exact path, we can inquire, with them. Oh, you're just such a sweet, kind person. I'd love to know more about you. Inquire about their life, inquire about their path, because Krishna is everywhere. Krishna's name, there's unlimited names for the Lord. So if we take that understanding to know that Krishna is unlimited, then how could we possibly limit him to one religion? Because that would be then bringing him down to a material platform. We would be limiting him. So we can't limit Krishna. That's not possible, because Krishna is limitless, and limitless means that he can show up anywhere, literally anywhere. I'm a big fan of going and walking in the woods, and for years before I came to this space, that was my religion. I really felt connection with God and nature, and I still do. To this very day, I feel such a strong connection with God, with Krishna and nature. Because why? Krishna is everywhere. So that's really it. That's how we access those relationships with others, is remembering that. Thank you. Good question. Any questions on John?
This sentence in the verse really stuck with me. You are a friend of all, so kindly describe them for all those who have lost their spirit, who have lost their vision. And Srila Prabhupada explains spiritual vision based on the influence of the material energy. And I was thinking, this is me. This is us. We've lost our vision based upon our material, the influence of material energy on us, our material conditioning. And just the impact of the vision of the Dura asking this question, and the impact that it's had, 5,000 years later. It just goes to show you that you never know the impact of your of the endeavor that you're going to have. Sometimes you plant a tree in which you're never going to enjoy the shade from that tree.
Yeah.
But yet you understand the importance of doing it. And people that have lost their vision due to material conditioning, most of the time they're really not too interested in hearing about a spiritual vision or understanding how they've lost their spiritual vision, until they hit a point where they become perplexed in life and maybe they become opened up to it. But it's not like there's like a line of people just waiting to hear about this, spiritual vision. So even more so, he's talking about, he's preparing something for humanity, knowing that they need this, but also knowing that they're not interested in this either, and not knowing when these kind of time capsules are going to be unveiled
Yeah.
into the hearts of people so many years later. Now, he was able to describe this to his brother, Dhritarashtra, which then allowed Dhritarashtra to kind of wake up and go to the forest and leave his life, leave his body in at least some level of respectful way. But it just kind of goes to show you that, like, these saintly devotees, they're really looking out for the welfare of everybody, without necessarily the immediate attachment of, like, how many people do I have in the room? How many people are listening? How many people? Knowing that these may be revealed hundreds, thousands of years down the line. You know, Srila Prabhupada, in just a very short amount of time, he came, but his vision was this movement is going to actually create a revolution within the world. Not knowing, it's not going to, obviously, it's going to be more than a couple of years for it to actually influence all of humanity. So, yeah, anyway, I heard that in there, and I felt very grateful.
Yeah.
That without people codifying this, devotees codifying this, the Lord codifying it for us to receive thousands of years later, we would be lost.
Yeah, absolutely. It's such a beautiful point, because even in our current understanding with what Prabhupada did, Prabhupada, like you said, I mean, he came here knowing he was coming to the US, which was like godless in a sense of when he was approaching these young hippies. He didn't know where they were in their minds. He was just taking it on faith that they might be interested. But there were so many times that Prabhupada came up against these stumbling blocks where people absolutely were not interested in hearing what he had to say. So all that he could do was plant a seed, maybe give prasadam, book distribution, get it in someone's hands. Maybe someday they'll look at it. I heard stories about, people receiving books that they bought on the street, tucking it in a bookcase, and, a decade or two later, picking it up and reading it, and, oh my God, this is it. But it took them 20 years to get there. So we never know. We never know. It's funny. I tell a story about my own life. I was in high school and I was traveling on a band trip through DC, and we were on the mall, the mall in DC, which is the long stretch of grass between the monuments. And there was Hare Krishnas there. And I was 17, 16 maybe. And they were giving out carnations, and I gave a $5 donation. And I got my flower. And I just remember so vividly this interaction with them. Fast forward, literally 20 years. And I was in a thrift store, going through a very difficult time in my life. I was in a thrift store, and I never would go to the book section of this thrift store because it was always chaotic, and I like things nicely alphabetized and categorized, and it was very chaotic. And I just felt that day to go to the book section, and I went immediately to the book section, and I picked up a copy of Bhagavad Gita as it is. I didn't know what it was, but I picked it up, and I was like, I want to read this book. And it was the only thing I bought that day. It was $1 at a thrift store, and it was Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita. And I took it home and I read it, and that's how I ended up showing up at the temple like a few weeks later. So we just never know. We never know how Krishna is going to get through to us. But we can't forget, even though we may think that someone is not ready and they're so engaged in material energies, we have to remember that Krishna is in everyone's heart, a super soul. So if we very peacefully and sweetly plant a seed with people, even if it is just through prasadam, we never know how that seed can cultivate, because Krishna is the one really pulling the strings there. And Krishna knows the readiness of all of our hearts. So yeah, beautiful. I love that. Anyone online?
Yeah, they asked us, anyone online, but looks like the call dropped. Maybe they lost connection there. So I guess we'll just have to end the class here. Thank you, everybody, for attending the class this morning. It was a wonderful class. Between yesterday and today, I think there was a lot to think about. Looks like he's connecting again.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah,
Bye.
I'm sorry about that. That was my fault. I was getting a phone call at the same time as I was trying to unmute it, and I hung up the Zoom call instead of the phone call.
That's okay. I will just then I was about to ask anybody if they had questions, and I was just saying, between today and yesterday, it has been a wonderful class. A lot for us to think about, a lot for us to figure out how to apply all of this. I heard you say about your Guru Maharaj saying, don't, bringing it back down to what it is. But the point is to apply what we are learning here and to progress in the right direction. Um, uh, and the point about, if we do try to do this on our own, we'll just hear whatever we want to hear from any class.
Yeah.
Between two people, I hear what I want to hear and you hear what you want to hear. And so it is very important that we have good association. And like Charuchandra Prabhu would say, Sadhu Sangha doesn't mean you just go sit in the middle of sadhus and say, this is Sadhu Sangha.
Yeah.
It is actually understand who to associate with, how much to associate with, and what to take from whatever we are hearing. And yesterday's point also that Mother Shyamala Gopika said, everybody is a devotee in some form or shape. And how do we treat them, and how do we deal with them? There's just so much to understand, and it cannot be done in a rush. That's just one thing. You were saying it took you 20 years to come to the temple. It took me a lot longer. First time I went to an ISKCON temple was in 1984.
Yeah.
And I took initiation in 2018. So, but still, I don't think the point is how long it is, how well we do it, quality.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
No, thank you. That's a wonderful insight. And the race is not for the swift.
Yes.
I feel very strongly about this. It's a very private, personal journey. Because it's our personal relationship with God. So it's very personal. So we have to remember that it's our pace is our pace. And however we choose to deepen our spiritual life, however we choose to step into our relationship with Krishna, it's personal. It's our relationship. Thank you. That's beautiful. Any other? Okay.
No more hands.
No more hands? Well, thanks, everyone. It's lovely spending the morning with you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Panchakalpa Trubhisha Kripa Sindhu Vaidyacha Titanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Srila Prabhupada Ki.
Jai.
Krishna. Have a wonderful